Hi, everyone. I'm Evan Northup of Gail Perry Group. I'm delighted to welcome Abby Jarvis of Neon One. Excuse me. Welcome, Abby.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I'm really excited. We are talking about all things data and giving. Of course, it's one of the biggest hot topics. We're in the business of both art and science. But today we're really going to dive in about recurring giving. So tell me about the latest recurring giving report from Neon One. What is it? Why should all fundraisers everywhere put this on their must-read list?
So, what it is, it's a look at how recurring giving grew and evolved over a 5 year period. So, we looked at the period, it was 2018 through 2022. So, we looked at how it changed for the industry, and then we looked specifically at how it changed for nonprofits of different sizes. So, we split all the trends into small, mid sized, and large nonprofits. And we also pulled out some really interesting data that gives you insights into who recurring donors are, why they're giving, and how they're doing that. So, little something for everybody in there.
Good. Yeah, recurring donors, we talk about it as monthly donors or anyone who's really sort of on sort of that sustainable model.
Yeah.
So this is really exciting because I believe in the report it said that only about 2% of revenue comes from recurring donors from a lot of nonprofits.
Yeah, for a lot of nonprofits, it is not the biggest revenue stream, but it is a really important revenue stream, and it is starting to grow more and more for nonprofits across the board. So, still a small percentage, but a significant one.
Yeah, because I was reading, and tell me if this is correct, but in the recurring giving report, it showed that recurring donors and revenue are both on the rise, and that recurring donors actually have much higher retention rates and much longer average donor lifetimes. So if this is
Yes.
all true, this seems like a no-brainer for nonprofits to invest resources in.
Yeah, I really hope that having some hard numbers around these trends do that. I hope that does reiterate that this is a really valuable tactic. We saw a lot of growth in this area, kind of across the board. More and more people are choosing to give recurring gifts, and when they do, we found some really cool patterns around how long they stay involved. So across the industry, for example, we know that donor retention rates have always been kind of a challenge, but the retention rates for these recurring donors are just so much higher. And when they are retained, they tend to support the nonprofits that they make a gift to for a little over 8 years total. And that's compared to less than 2 years for people who give but don't make recurring donations. So there's some remarkable growth here. And if nonprofits can focus on reaching this kind of donor, they can build a really steady base of really engaged supporters. It's very cool to watch.
So really, it's about reliable and consistent sort of revenue streams if you invest in these recurring donors, right?
Yeah, definitely. And there are also some other patterns that we're seeing, mostly in that those people are giving that sustainable, ongoing, predictable revenue, but they're also supporting their favorite causes in other ways on top of their commitment. So they're a really engaged, very dedicated group of people.
So you basically can build a community and a network of supporters while maintaining more sustainable revenue stream. And so basically you're also creating a whole new world of advocates for your nonprofit.
Oh my gosh, yes. And that's one of my favorite things to talk about is how engaged this group of people is. We see them, they're giving additional gifts, they're volunteering, they're buying memberships to the organization, they're attending events. And I mean, all of this data comes out of Neon CRM, and there are a lot of ways that people advocate for their favorite causes that you can't turn into a data point in a CRM. They're talking about this cause to their friends and their family. They're boosting visibility on social media by engaging with their posts. They're just huge fans. They're the super fans of these nonprofits, and it's significant.
It's so interesting, and we chatted about this. It could be an entirely different live stream, so we're not going to get into it. But sort of the next generation of donors, everyone kind of has this subscription model, right? You sign up for
Mhm.
something, and if you care about it, you just continue to give. And so, are you seeing that just the more people who sign up to be recurring donors are just really the ones who care deeply about a mission? So you've already like scored resonating points with them, right?
Yeah, definitely. The thing that we saw in when we looked at some of the actual donor data, we did, and I won't get into the specifics of it because we'd be here forever, but we did a really cool analysis of 13,000 notes, personal notes that donors added to their transaction when they were giving. And that analysis just revealed what I think fundraisers have always kind of known, but now there are numbers behind it. There are people who are making these gifts, and they are doing so because they are deeply personally and emotionally invested in the work that these nonprofits are doing. And the fact that people are sharing their hearts at the risk of sounding corny during the donation
Okay.
process is really a testament to how deeply invested in this work these people are. So they're not only like reliable revenue, but they're also tremendous advocates who are so passionate about the causes they support.
One thing I really love about the recurring giving report that Neon One put out is it really you're taking data as much as you can, but you're also showing how it has a heartfelt impact on the people that
Mm-hmm.
we're talking about, the people that we serve as fundraisers. So obviously, we all need to be spending more time on recurring giving programs.
Mm-hmm.
Seems like something we all have to be doing. So, what are some tips and tricks you have to building a program out, sort of getting people started on looking at this as something to invest in?
My answer to this question might sound kind of silly, but my first answer is just to ask people for recurring donations. With, if you look at some of the numbers that we go over in the recurring giving report, you may notice that yes, for example, nonprofits have seen on average 127% growth in their base of recurring donors. However, that's still not a lot of active recurring donors. At the beginning of the study, so in 2018, the average nonprofit represented in this data set had 11 recurring donors. By the end, they had 25. So that's significant growth, but it's still there. It means there's a lot of opportunity for nonprofits to start this kind of program. So, from what we can tell, a lot of this is happening organically without nonprofits actively seeking these kinds of gifts. So, just start and ask and invite your community to support you this way. So, that's my first piece of advice. And then the second would be to focus on giving recurring supporters really wonderful experiences
Mhm.
not only during the donation process and in the days following when you get the thank you letter that comes out, but really focus on building those relationships and deepening that emotional personal connection between your supporter and the cause. That if you want to keep people engaged, if you want to make this a sustainable fundraising practice, the more deeply you strengthen those relationships, the longer they will stay engaged with your cause, and the more likely they will be to do things like make additional gifts or attend events or support you in other ways. So start. You don't have to have a fully fleshed out like stewardship plan or multi-channel campaign or anything to get started. And then really focus on not necessarily the numbers and the KPIs and everything, but focus on those personal relationships and deepening those connections because that is what is going to result in a steady donor base.
I mean, that's amazing. I think that this is something that we can all talk about. Stewardship is not just you send a thank you letter when someone gives a gift. It is
Right.
about maintaining that affinity. It's about always sort of growing that relationship as you're moving on. And with
Yeah.
someone who's giving on a recurring basis, it's just more opportunity, right? It's more touch points that you can have with them to make sure that that average donor lifetime and that retention rate stays sort of
Yeah.
at that really high level.
Yes. Yes.
Perfect, perfect. And what I loved also about the report that you guys put out was you actually had a lot of case studies. You talked to a lot of people in nonprofits about
Mhm.
really what recurring giving has done for them. Is that something that sort of, as you've looked at it, because you were looking at both small, medium, and large nonprofits, are there any of those particularly that stand out to you?
Well, each little cohort has something that they do remarkably well. Small nonprofits, for example, have so just as a to back up. As a general rule, recurring donors will give less on an annual basis than people who don't have those scheduled gifts. That's to be expected, right? And I did talk about this in the blog, so I'm not going to in the blog I wrote for y'all that I'm sure you guys will share. So I'm not going to repeat it all, but the gap between the annual giving amounts for recurring and non-recurring donors was smallest for small nonprofits. And what that means is that the people who are giving to small nonprofits are giving very generously, and we love to see that. So small nonprofits do that really well. Mid-sized organizations, I don't know what y'all are doing, but you are doing such a good job at keeping donors engaged for really long periods of time. So I mentioned that the average recurring lifetime is around 8 years. For nonprofits in the mid-size category, it's over 10 over this 5-year
Wow.
period. So mid-sized nonprofits are just killing the donor retention game. And then large nonprofits have higher average gifts, and they tend to have higher retention rates, although those retention rates don't necessarily stretch as long as mid-size do. So what I'm seeing is that different revenue bands all thrive in different areas. And what that really tells me is that all of these different organizations, regardless of their size and even their mission, have a lot to learn from each other about how to build and sustain these programs and build these communities, because everyone is really, really great at something.
I just absolutely love that. And I think it's so important. Recurring revenue, we could get into much longer conversations about what that means for stewardship, what that means for pipeline development. We talk a lot about major gifts and capital campaigns at Gail Perry Group and what that means, and really looking at those people who have the affinity and the dedication to your nonprofit. That is your pipeline. We can have a whole other live session on that. But I just wanted to see if there was any last gold nuggets that you had for the fundraisers that are watching, any last insights and tips that you might have.
The one little kind of nugget that I'll throw out there is actually the result of several conversations I've had with fundraisers. I've talked to fundraisers at really big organizations. I've talked to fundraisers at really small organizations. And I've heard expressed to me a few different times that people are intimidated by this. They feel like they're behind the curve because they're afraid that they don't have as robust a campaign or a program as the nonprofit down the street. And I'm just here to tell you, remember, like, this shouldn't be too scary. It's okay if it is a little bit, but these people are the people who are most engaged in your cause. They're the most passionate about your work. They are going to be gracious with you as you launch this. Make them part of your community. They don't need to be scary, nameless people. They love you and they want to support you this way. So it's okay if you're intimidated. Just don't let it stop you.
Just start. Just start. I always say,
Start.
when you're having to eat an elephant, just take the first bite. Just do it. Thank you so much, Abby. Thank you and the team, everyone at Neon One and Tim. I hope you all tune in next time we go live at Gail Perry Group. Share these tips in the meantime with everyone you know in the nonprofit world, and have a great day. Thanks again,
Thank
Abby.
you. Thank you.